So we've got a few more we can go ahead and do. We've got, well, a lot more actually. So tangent inverse, we're going to do that one. So it's square root of 3 over 3, so it's a positive number, which means we're going to be first quadrant. Tangent, remember, is y over x. And the only way to get a square root of 3 over 3 would be if we had to rationalize. So that means that the square root of 3 should have been on the denominator. So, oops, I already highlighted apparently. That would be pi 6, because the x value has to have the square root of 3 on it. Okay, next one, cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, and it's going to be in the fourth quadrant since this one is negative. And it's the reciprocal of sine, so it's the reciprocal of y, which means that the reciprocal of this would be negative square root of 3 over 2. So I'm looking for a coordinate that's got negative square root of 3 over 2 as my y value, and that would be negative pi thirds. Remember, you cannot write pi thirds, or 5 pi thirds, you have to write negative pi thirds. That's only true for the ones in the fourth quadrant. Okay, cosine, the next one, it's inverse. So the inverse of cosine, if the number is negative, is going to be in the fourth quadrant, or sorry, second quadrant, because I can count. Second quadrant. Now this one's a little tricky because in the second quadrant, it's actually on an axis that cosine is -1. So x equals -1 is at the angle pi. Okay, sine. So sine's going to be over here because we're looking for a negative y value. By the way, even if you don't remember this lovely trick I've given you, if you try to find a y value that's negative in the second quadrant, you won't find one. So you're automatically guaranteed to know, oh, it's got to be in the fourth quadrant, as long as you know we're not using the third. So we're looking for a y value. It's going to be in the fourth quadrant. And the y value has to be negative square root of 2 over 2, so it's going to be at negative pi over 4, because I have to write it as a negative angle. Tangent and cotangent, it's not as easy to remember that for those two, but cotangent should follow the trend of the x's, so you want the x to be negative if you need it, but this is not negative. We have 0, so we've got to figure out which of these two will give us 0. And if you get 0, that means 0 has to be on top, so we're going to be using pi over 2. And then secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so we're looking at an x value, and if this is the reciprocal of square root of 2 is square root of 2 over 2. So the x value needs to be square root of 2 over 2, which that would be at pi fourths. All right, let's go ahead and do a little more. Now, when you have a double problem like this, you actually have to evaluate the inverse first, or whatever's inside first, and then apply the function on the outside. So let's do the inverse. So remember, sine is a y value, so we're looking for a y value of -1/2. And then since it's negative, it's got to be in the fourth quadrant since we don't use the third. And -1/2 would be one of the negative angles, so we get tangent of negative pi 6. That's where you get that one. And then you just look at that exact same angle, and we're going to go ahead and do our tangent. Remember, tangent is y over x. So we got -1/2 over square root of 3 over 2, or I'm going to write it down here, -1 over square root of 3, which when you rationalize is square root of 3 over, negative square root of 3 over, 3. There we go. Excellent. Let's go ahead and do another one. So I'm going to do the inside first. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so the reciprocal of the x. So x has to be 1/2. And so I'm going to go ahead and look at the x value right here. There's an x of 1/2 right here at pi thirds. So I'm going to do sine of pi thirds. So I'm going to look back at that. Sine is the y value. So I get square root of 3 over 2 as my answer. And then let's do one more before we stop this. So next one, tangent. We're going to do this inverse. It's a negative inverse. So remember, negative. If the number is negative for a tangent inverse problem, we're going to use the fourth quadrant. And we have tangent is y over x. And since it's negative square root of 3 and it's not going to be rationalized, that means we want the square root on the numerator. So we're going to look for an angle that gives us a y value of negative square root of 3 over 2 and an x value of 1/2. We're going to plug that in. So that would be y value right here. So negative pi thirds. Because remember, the fourth quadrant, you always need the negative angle. And then at that exact same angle, we're just going to go ahead and find the cosine value, or the x value, which is positive 1/2. So that would be our answer.